have had yours cut because you got what's called a pit pension.
Yeah,
is that right? Could you just...
top of my state pension, so the top bracket, I'm past that, so I don't get the extra 350 quid, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that does mean that you are going to struggle to heat your home this winter, doesn't it?
It's a struggle up here, outstanding, you know what I mean? It's cold, but like, I'd rather heat myself and move around the room, you know.
And in order to do that and to keep yourself warm as you move around your home, what is it that you do?
I bought a heater last year, and I just swapped room to room with it. Yeah, it's over there.
So it's that heater here. So you take...
Royal intervention. King Charles demands Starmer address tax crisis. Good evening, and welcome back to UK Connors, where we dissect the political machinations that shape our great nation. I'm your host, and tonight we're diving into something rather extraordinary that sent shockwaves through Westminster corridors and left Number 10 scrambling for damage control. Picture this. His Majesty King Charles III, in what palace insiders describe as an unprecedented move, has reportedly made it crystal clear to Prime Minister Keir Starmer that the current tax debacle requires immediate resolution. Not next month, not after the next cabinet reshuffle, but now. And frankly, when the monarch starts flexing constitutional muscle, you know the political landscape has shifted into uncharted territory. But before we unpack this royal intervention, let me paint you the scene that sparked this extraordinary response. Meet Billy Pounder, a 69-year-old former miner from Stanley, County Durham. This gentleman, who spent his entire working life contributing to Britain's economy, now finds himself choosing between heating his home and putting food on his table. Yes, you heard that correctly. In 2025, in one of the world's wealthiest nations, our pensioners are making survival decisions that would make Dickens weep. Billy's story isn't just heartbreaking, it's a damning indictment of Labour's promises versus their delivery. Remember those golden campaign pledges? Starmer promised to slash energy bills by up to £300. Instead, Billy and millions like him are facing a brutal reality check as energy costs surge by 2% under the new price cap, pushing the average household bill to a staggering £1,755 annually. Now, here's where it gets particularly interesting from a constitutional perspective. Sources close to Buckingham Palace suggest that His Majesty has grown increasingly concerned about the disconnect between Westminster's policies and their real-world impact on his subjects. The King, who has spent decades championing causes close to ordinary people's hearts, reportedly views the current tax and energy crisis as a fundamental breach of the social contract between government and governed. Billy Pounder's words should haunt every politician in Westminster. They give with one hand and take with the other. This isn't just political criticism. It's a cry from the heart of working-class Britain. Here's a man who's already adapted his entire lifestyle around energy conservation, cooking meals in batches, rushing his washing, going to bed early to stay warm. Yet Starmer's government responds by stripping away winter fuel payments while energy costs continue their relentless climb. The constitutional implications here are fascinating and frankly unprecedented in modern times. While the monarch traditionally maintained political neutrality, insiders suggest King Charles views the current situation through the lens of his coronation oath to serve and protect his people. When pensioners like Billy are receiving stress-inducing letters from energy companies demanding more frequent top-ups while simultaneously losing essential support payments, the very fabric of British social responsibility is under threat. Let's examine what's really happening behind those Downing Street doors. Ed Miliband and his net-zero obsession have become the political equivalent of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, while British households drown in energy debt. The government's response to Ofgem's announcement reveals everything you need to know about their priorities. Instead of addressing immediate hardship, they are doubling down on ideological commitments that leave people like Billy in the cold, literally and figuratively. Claire Coutinho's response cuts to the heart of the matter. This is the human impact of what happens when politicians prioritize their net-zero obsession over Britain's need for affordable, reliable energy. She's absolutely right, and it appears His Majesty shares similar concerns about the disconnect between political theory and practical reality. But here's what makes this royal intervention truly significant. King Charles isn't just expressing concern, he's reportedly demanding action. Palace sources suggest the king has made it clear to Starmer that the current trajectory is unsustainable and that immediate measures must be taken to address the tax burden crushing ordinary families. This isn't constitutional overreach. It's constitutional responsibility in action. Richard Tice's assessment that British households are paying 12% more than when Labour came into office isn't just political point scoring. It's mathematical fact. That's an additional £200 annually that families like Billy simply cannot afford. When you're living on a state pension and using key meters, every pound matters. Every percentage increase hurts. The really damning aspect of this entire saga is how it exposes Labour's fundamental dishonesty with the British electorate. They campaigned on reducing energy bills by £300, yet their first major acts included abolishing winter fuel payments for millions of pensioners while energy costs continued rising. Billy Pounder's regret over his Labour vote represents a broader betrayal felt across working-class communities who trusted Starmer's promises. What makes the King's intervention particularly powerful is the timing. As Parliament grapples with the immediate fallout from rising energy costs and increasing tax pressures, His Majesty's concerns carry constitutional weight that transcends party politics. When the head of state expresses concern about his subjects' welfare, it creates political pressure that no prime minister can simply ignore or spin away. The human stories emerging from this crisis are genuinely heartbreaking. Billy describes his daily reality. I just sit in a house since I can't move around, thus I use more electricity and gas. This is the lived experience of Labour's policy choices. While ministers debate net zero targets in heated Westminster offices, pensioners are rationing their heating and going to bed early to stay warm. Palace insiders suggest the King's intervention reflects deeper concerns about social cohesion and the government's responsibility to protect vulnerable citizens. When Billy says, "They don't understand what it means to struggle," is articulating a frustration that extends far beyond energy bills. This is about fundamental fairness, about a government that seems more concerned with international climate precedent being set here is remarkable. While respecting traditional boundaries, King Charles is using his unique position to highlight issues that affect millions of his subjects. This isn't political interference. It's constitutional responsibility expressed through appropriate channels. The monarch's role as guardian of national welfare is being exercised in ways we haven't seen in generations. Starmer's response to this royal pressure will define his premiership's trajectory. Can he pivot from ideological commitment to practical governance? Will he acknowledge that net zero policies must be balanced against immediate human need? The King's intervention suggests that constitutional patience with government inaction is wearing thin. The broader implications extend beyond energy policy into fundamental questions about governance and representation. When a 69-year-old former miner must choose between heating and eating while his government prioritizes abstract climate targets over concrete human welfare, something has gone fundamentally wrong with our political system. Billy Pounder's story represents millions of similar stories across Britain. Pensioners adapting their entire lives around energy costs, receiving threatening letters from suppliers, watching their living standards erode under policies they were promised would help them. The King's reported intervention suggests that these stories have reached the highest levels of our constitutional system. What we're witnessing is potentially historic. A monarch using constitutional influence to advocate for subjects facing government-imposed hardship. King Charles's reported demands for immediate action on tax issues reflect a broader concern about social responsibility and governmental accountability that transcends traditional party politics. The energy crisis has become a tax crisis, which has become a constitutional crisis. When the head of state feels compelled to intervene on behalf of struggling subjects, it signals that normal political processes have failed to address fundamental problems. Starmer's government now faces pressure not just from opposition parties, but from the constitutional apex of British governance. This royal intervention transforms the political landscape in ways that will resonate far beyond immediate energy policy debates. It establishes precedent for constitutional engagement with social welfare issues and creates accountability mechanisms that transcend traditional party politics. The King's reported action suggests that protecting vulnerable subjects isn't just governmental responsibility, it's constitutional imperative. The convergence of royal concern and public hardship creates political pressure that Starmer cannot easily deflect or ignore. When Billy Pounder's story reaches Buckingham Palace and prompts constitutional intervention, it demonstrates how individual suffering can catalyze broader systemic change. The King's reported demands for immediate action reflect understanding that constitutional stability depends on governmental responsiveness to citizen welfare. As this story develops, we're witnessing something unprecedented in modern British politics: constitutional power being exercised to protect vulnerable citizens from governmental policies that prioritize ideological commitments over human welfare. The King's intervention on tax issues represents more than royal concern. It's constitutional accountability in action. The implications will reverberate through Westminster for months to come. Starmer's government must now navigate not just political opposition, but constitutional pressure from the highest levels of British governance. When the monarch demands immediate action on tax issues affecting struggling families like Billy's, it creates governmental obligations that transcend normal political calculations. This is constitutional democracy at its most fundamental level, the head of state advocating for subjects facing governmental policies that threaten their basic welfare. King Charles's reported intervention establishes new parameters for constitutional engagement with social issues and creates accountability mechanisms that will influence British governance for generations. What happens next will define not just Starmer's premiership, but the relationship between constitutional authority and governmental responsibility in modern Britain. The King has reportedly made his position clear. Immediate action on tax issues affecting vulnerable families is not just political necessity, it's constitutional imperative. How Starmer responds will determine whether this royal intervention marks a turning point toward more responsive governance or deepens the crisis of confidence in Britain's political system. And there you have it, a constitutional drama unfolding in real time, with real consequences for millions of British families caught between governmental promises and harsh economic reality. This is the kind of political earthquake that reshapes not just policies, but the fundamental relationship between rulers and ruled in our constitutional monarchy. Stay tuned to UK Connors, because this story is far from over, and the constitutional implications will continue unfolding in ways that will define British politics for years to come. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss our next deep dive into the political machinations that shape our nation's destiny.